Hello and welcome to the Finding Your Voice platform, where we're aiming to connect everybody from all over the world in a time of social distancing, self-isolation, and global lockdown. Today, my very dear friend and special guest is Sekita-Ra Mennie. She, after school, went and did 3 years of OE, which is heading off overseas. She went volunteering in Scotland and spent a little while living and working alongside people with disabilities, which must have been amazing. She has also worked on the Greenpeace ships in both the Mediterranean and the Caribbean. She sailed a 100-year-old ketch from New Zealand to the Pacific, as well as through the Panama Canal, which I just think is incredible. She's been a care worker in New Zealand. How we met was we studied a outdoor recreation course together, which was one of the most challenging things in my life, and Sekita just held the flame for me, so she's going to talk more about that, I'm sure. She became a sea-kayak guide in Abel Tasman. She spent 5 years as an Outward Bound Instructor, and I can't wait to hear more about that, and then decided to follow her passion of becoming a midwife. Now, Sekita, you've literally walked alongside people, encouraging them and teaching them the skills that have been so necessary to do what it is that they're wanting to do, whether it's in climbing a mountain, sailing across the 7 seas, having a baby. I mean, wow, where do your skills stop? I don't know. I don't think they do. It's really all about your role in life, I believe, is about guiding people and assisting people to achieve the successes that they're wanting for themselves. Just want to say thank you so much for coming on board. I know that you spent a night being on call, and I really do appreciate you coming on to have a chat with us today. How's everything going?
It's really good here in Nelson, sunny. Yeah, and I didn't get called out, so on call, but a good night's sleep, and you're most welcome.
Yeah. Sekita, you know, I've always said this from the minute you first introduced yourself to me when we were on that scary 6-month course that I found myself on when we were doing the outdoor education side of things. You were somebody who just really held the flame for me. There were a lot of times when I felt out of my depth, and I felt like, what is all this stuff that I'm doing? I'd never done rock climbing before. And I remember that you were at the top of the climb. Oh no, you were at the bottom and I was at the top. And you were making sure that I was safe before I undid my rope and then put it through and then lowered it down to, and you were giving me step by step by step in the biggest length of details. And I was just like, it's kind of irritating, but thank goodness I've got you, because I couldn't think for myself up there, you know. And then you went on to go and do Outward Bound Instructing, and even though you've tried, 20 million times to try and get me to come down there, that was not where I was ever going to end up. I'd love for you just to tell me a little bit more. I mean, you were sea kayak guiding down there, you were in the bush for long periods of time, you were taking people on boats, making people swim in cold water. I mean, that is seriously putting people outside of their comfort zones, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I think everyone's comfort zone is different. So those things that I love doing, and I don't know if you're aware, but actually when we started that outdoor course up in Auckland, my biggest fear was heights. So maybe that's why I spoke you through in so much detail.
Is that why I went up first?
Yeah.
I got it. Okay. It all becomes clearer now.
Yeah. But you know, what is comfortable for one person is totally uncomfortable for another. And I think, especially at Outward Bound, you get to see the magic of a group there. It's usually groups of 14 people being together and helping each other through challenges, because out of a group of 14, usually Kiwis there at Outward Bound, they're nearly always, with each challenge, is some people that are relishing that activity and not at all challenged, and other people that are shitting their pants. And so as a team, if they can come to realize, no matter how strong or capable or incapable a person perceives themselves to be, there'll always be some activities that the strongest person is the one that's really challenged, and the perceived weakest person might be really good at that. And yeah, they can help each other, and together as a team usually get through everything, even if it's solo activities like climbing, because then, you know, you help people with your encouragement or your calm instruction, or if need be and they freeze, your brute strength of hauling on that rope to, you know, dislodge them, have them dang. So, yeah.
You know, and I remember you phoning me one time, and we were having a discussion where you were taking people out who they might have been on one of your shorter courses. I stand corrected if I've got the details wrong. Where they were going to go and do a 3-day or something solo, where they were going to have minimum things, and they needed to go and look after themselves, and they were going to be isolated from other people, and they were going to need to build themselves a shelter. They were going to need to look after themselves. They were going to journal. They were going to do all those kind of things. That was one side of things, which I think for a lot of people is quite threatening, because you're attacking your basic need for comfort and your basic need for shelter and warmth and survival, and it's like everything just gets thrown out the cot, right? You're just like, oh my gosh. But it's one of the most liberating times where everything else that used to matter suddenly doesn't matter anymore. And now what matters is that you stay okay, that you keep your mind busy, that you know that you're getting through it, that you do the inner work or anything else that comes up, you know, you deal with the fact that you're by yourself and all that. That was the one thing that stood out of one of the conversations we had. And the other thing, which I think is so relevant right now in these times of COVID, is, was it a morning activity, or it was something that everybody would go out and run, and you know, it was a 3K run or something, and if you came in first but the rest of your team was still behind, you were sent back to go and run with your team or something.
Yes.
It was about carrying the team forward. And so you only, and if you didn't get it and you still came back and the rest of your team wasn't back, you were sent to go back to the rest of your team, which, while it would have been incredibly frustrating, the essence behind the lesson there was that you're stronger together. You know, like it's about helping the other people through. So you have the one thing where it's all about you and your survival, and then you have the other side of things in that particular conversation that we were having, which is about, it's not only about your survival, it's actually about everyone else's survival and about everyone else crossing the finishing line. I wondered if you wanted to speak about that a little bit.
Well, yeah, solo, something that I find really significant about what Outward Bound calls solo, or people go off and do their own solos. Like north of Auckland, there's an area where people can go and do a 10-day silent retreat called Vipassana, and you're surrounded by lots of people, but you have your own room that you sleep in at night, and you spend close on 10 hours a day sitting in silence in a big hall with other people, but you don't talk at all during the 10 days. So that's also a form of solo. And the solo we do at Outward Bound, where people are dropped off in the bush, spaced out from each other, and spend some nights and days out there. To me, I think hopefully a great takeaway from that for people is looking at actually that, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and those basics of what we need versus what we maybe think we need, or also the difference between need and want. Because for those students, they are given a shelter that they then have to erect, but it's just a like 2.5 meter by 2 meter piece of waterproof canvas with tent strings on the corners. So they mostly tie it up to trees like a little A-frame, and then they're given a plastic tarp to sleep on and a basic sleeping mat, and they have a sleeping bag. They have enough food for 3 days, but it's not a lot of food. And they have a journal for journaling, and are asked to stay within sort of a 15-meter radius of a given point on their solo site. And in very beautiful settings, like often lots of them can see the sea, not always, and lots of native bush. So I think, you know, like when we think of our actual needs, I don't know quite who he was, but Maslow's hierarchy of needs, lots of us learn about him when we study education or so. He said that, you know, a human's needs are warmth, shelter, food, water, and to be loved. In that case of that solo, you don't have people there direct necessarily loving you as such, but hopefully all those people know that they're loved by their families and dear ones that they're not seeing for a few days. And then those other things, though very basic, they're actually covered. And I do think that's relevant for us to try and remember at a time like this, where lots of us feel like a lot of our normal, just daily habits, or what we've come to see as our needs, have been taken away, and we feel like we can't do all the things that we usually do. To maybe have a recalibration of, well, what of those things are needs and what of them are wants? Because for that student out there in the bush, they all survive, and lots of them actually, in hindsight, really enjoy it and say it was a really good time for them to have quietness and to reevaluate their goals and what's important to them in their life and what's not, and to come to terms a bit more realistically with the difference between wants and needs. So, you know, for those guys, most of them for 3 days, it's like 3 carrots, 3 apples, and 3 bags of scroggin, and 3 like flapjacks, sort of like a muesli bar. So not a lot of food, but when you consider that you're not out there burning energy exercising or so, and you have a really warm sleeping bag, so you're not burning lots of energy on keeping warm, you're totally adequate. You've got, you know, they all get to take lots of water with them for drinking. So when you think of shelter, warmth, food, water, they've got it, and yet it's so much less than what we usually live with. And most of them report that solo was a really good time for them. Probably the hardest bit is that they get to poo in a bucket. Even that, you know, they all survive it, you know, and they literally get to deal with their own crap. And I think that sort of stuff too is a really good recalibration for us in this society. It's so, you know, so much stuff is sorted for us. You know, we don't live in a society where we have to go and catch or hunt or garden our own food, where we have to deal with our own bodily excretions. You know, we sit on a toilet and you push a button and it's flushed away, and hardly anyone actually thinks about where that away is, or where that meat came from, or
So lockdown, I mean, for all over the world, not just for those of us who are in New Zealand, but for anybody, lockdown is a little bit like being on your own solo. Except that you may,
for most of us have got a flush toilet and a pantry full of food.
You know, and oh my gosh, we have to clean our hands a little bit more. That's okay. You know, I mean, not to diminish the fact that we've got quite a serious thing happening, you know, but on the lighter side of things, it's a little bit like doing our own solo. And the significance of journaling is paramount, isn't it? It's the opportunity for you to get everything, all the muck that's in your brain that you haven't been dealing with, that you've just been pushing to the side and covering. It's now, it has an opportunity now to come in, because we're not so busy with everything else. We're not running around from one thing to another. We are being forced to stay relatively still. You know, we're allowed to get out in New Zealand, but our daily routine of time before COVID is probably not the same as what it is right now.
So many of those things as adults, I think you hear adults say so often, oh, that would be really good for me, or that would be really good to do, but I don't have time. And, you know, we do, like finally, though I hurt my lower back last Monday a week ago, so that's hindered me slowly, but, you know, finally, every day that I'm not on a 12-hour plus shift, I am getting up in the morning and doing my 10 to 15 minutes of meditation and my stretches. And I know this is good for me, and it's been yes, I'm going to do that for years, but it's never been regular. And I do think, right now is an awesome opportunity for doing some of those things. And journaling works, you know, it's really, some people it works really good for, other people it's meditating, other people it's stretching, other people breathing exercises. I don't think there's one thing that fits each person. At Outward Bound on Solo, we definitely asked students to keep, well, actually throughout the whole of Outward Bound, to keep just a bit of a journal. I have had periods of journaling myself, but for me personally, with regards to a journal, the thing I've found the most beneficial is a couple of years ago, my husband and I started a practice one new year that we got a little journal each, and at the end of each day we would tell each other one thing we were grateful for, and in our journal we would write 3 things we were grateful for, and one experience that had happened in the day that made us feel gratitude. And I really noticed that through a stressful period in my life that I was doing that I had that practice, which I haven't been doing so much lately. I feel like I didn't get as down as I normally would have when those outside stresses were happening. So that practice of really consciously putting down on paper what you're grateful for, and I think science, like the science of happiness, and institutes that are studying our mind's well-being and happiness are advocating and coming up with research results really showing the benefit of those sorts of practicing.
And what have you got to lose from giving it a go, right?
Yeah, that's what, some things take more effort than others, but to have a notebook by your bed and just write even one thing a day that you were grateful for. And I remember listening to direction on it, and the person was saying, if you're finding it challenging, start with, grateful for 2 eyes that can see and are not blind. It doesn't have to be profound things, and that you'll start using your brain in a different way, and your brain will learn to increase that capacity, and that it does have a real effect on your outlook and on the chemical balances in your brain.
And I think if we go back to the fun conversation that I was talking about, where if you got to the finish line, you got sent back to go and help other people, that if that was an analogy, it's not only other people that you're helping. Sure, there is at the time, like right now, is wash your hands, cough into your elbow, look after your, do your social distancing, do all those kind of, do your lockdown, follow whatever the stipulations are that that we've been told that we need to do. That's helping other people get there. But it's also a lot about coming back and just helping yourself. So if you run ahead of yourself in some aspect of your life, it's about, hang on a second, I got there, but I didn't have all these other aspects. So I'm just going to come back, and I'm now going to try journaling. And then you get to the end, journaling really works, but it's like, oh, but I haven't been eating that well. Okay, I'm going to go back. And there's nothing wrong with doing that, is it? I mean, actually, we're getting fitter, we're getting healthier because we're having to keep running back until sometimes we kind of look at everything and go, let me just stop and let me just walk for a little bit because I'm tired now of running. What is it that I can do that's going to make me a happy, whole, lighter, brighter person?
Well, with that running, it's not something that we get every group to do. But I think that particular group were a lot of maybe younger folks, teenagers, where it's a natural stage of our life to be pretty self-absorbed with my wants, my needs, and just trying to fine-tune them so that when they got let loose in the bush for 3 days, supposedly self-directing their tramp and getting themselves out well, and at the end, with everyone not hypothermic and everyone being fed, I think we had some concerns, like, are they going to look after each other? So really trying to drill them with, by looking out for everyone, you all benefit and you all become stronger. And whether that is running back to your teammates to make sure they come over the line, or whether all moving through the bush together, or at a time like this as a society, I think I've definitely talked to some people who think, well, I'm fine, I'm robust, I'm healthy. If I got COVID-19, I would, maybe be a bit crook with the flu, but, some people, the stories I hear, it doesn't seem to affect them much. So I reckon I'd be fine. Like I hear some people say things like that. And for me, it does bring up feelings of frustration, like, oh man, you're being so selfish, not you might be fine, but what about the people who wouldn't? Or what about the people who are maybe more anxious of it and don't have the choice that you have? So I do feel like, at a time like this, it is very much realizing that what we do individually can be detrimental or beneficial to the whole, which in turn has repercussions for the individual again, that sort of interdependence that happens.
Yeah, sorry. And not just for us as people, but our waterways and our airways and, you know, our global environment as a whole. We were just having that conversation earlier when you said the air quality over your area improved by what, 40%?
30 something. My husband was reading last night, or he was Googling stuff, and there was a stuff article on Nelson recently about the air quality in Nelson has improved by 30 something % since the lockdown. And I do think too, there's so many things that we can do that can be viewed as selfless and noble. Personally, I believe that at the end of the day, we're driven by what makes us feel good and us feel happy. And I believe that, you know, every person is on their journey trying to feel happy, and how we go about it is really varied, but ultimately everyone's driven by what makes them feel good and trying to feel happy and well. So looking after the environment, while sometimes it can mean in the short term a little bit of hardship, or, you know, walking rather than driving, which will take longer and we don't fit as much in, you can view it as, you know, being selfless and noble and environmental. But I think ultimately it's like, well, actually we all need this planet just to be breathing and to be here. Yeah. So whether you're really egotistical and self-absorbed or not at all, doesn't make a difference to whether you need drinkable water and air to breathe, you know, and some food. And in that way, a lot of what's happening right now, while I think it's hugely sad and tragic, the loss of lives in some of the parts of the world, for me personally, sitting here in Nelson and looking out the window and hearing that our air quality is improving, and that quite a few people have a whole lot less stress in their life, people that were really busy and stressed. So, you know, maybe this is, like, I think I saw a Facebook post that was like, it feels like Mother Earth sent us all to our room for 28 days. And that feels pretty spot on to me. It's like, and I think we probably needed it. Like a really good time for that reset, and that, we are really all in this together. And what we do, even though we walk around as individuals, we're one huge big organism. You know, if you cut your toe off, even though your thumb doesn't feel it, it affects the well-being of your thumb, because your blood pressure drops and your thumb gets less oxygenated blood. And I feel like, as being, you know, all of us and all the creatures on the planet is a bit like that. You know, if trees get chopped down in South America, I might not even be aware of it. I might not know about it, but indirectly it affects my house, because those trees generate a large portion of the good, healthy oxygen on the planet. Just like my thumb wouldn't know that my toe's in pain, but it's still going to be affected by getting less oxygenated blood. I don't know.
I really like that, because that, I mean, using that analogy of the toe and the thumb, I hadn't actually heard that, but it's kind of made me kind of just think about it, going, maybe that's a plausible idea. And maybe just if I do something different, I do something positive for the environment, maybe I do make an impact. You know, there's a lot of people who be like, but I'm just one person. You know what? So if I start eating organic, or I don't go on a plane trip, but everyone else is going on a plane trip, then it's like, well, you're still helping, because you are one less person who's gone on a plane trip, you know, or you're one less person who's polluting the waterways, you know.
And your circle of influence, you know, you might inspire 3 people, who might inspire 2, 3, and 5 people, who might inspire, you know, a little bit like that story about, you know, the individual snow crystal is microscopic, but put them together and look what an avalanche can achieve, you know. And like at the moment, no one's flying between Auckland and Christchurch for their jobs, or, you know, there's people in Nelson who work in Wellington and fly 3 or 4 times a week to Wellington and back, and they individually, that might not make much difference to our atmosphere and to CO2 emissions, But if each of them, through a period like this, realizes maybe there's a way I can do my work from Nelson, and then, you know, if the whole country or the majority of the country did that and learnt that through something like COVID-19, then to me it seems, while this period has had a lot of tragedy associated with it, there also can be a lot of goodness on a planetary level and on people's individual level. Like in December, I'm pretty sure I had glandular fever, and until about a week ago, I was still finding things that I would normally do and still have heaps of energy were just exhausting me. And it's about a week ago that I came home from a 12-hour shift and realized, oh, I'm not exhausted. And I think that's because, you know, for the week prior to that, I wasn't able to socialize or just go and do all this to-do list that wasn't a must-do, but a would be good to-do list in town. So in between my work, it's just being at home, going for gentle walks, doing gardening. And so I think, you know, my body, all of a sudden I've noticed this big jump in the amount of energy that I have. And yeah, I feel like that's happening around us in the environment too. We've got so many more birds around us than we, you know, it was starting to increase slowly over the last years. But now there's, the last week or so, there's the fantails and the tuis in the garden, and it's just, it feels really good, I think, in many ways.
Well, long may it last. Long may it last. Not COVID, but the effects of COVID, you know, the positive effects, both on ourselves and our community, the world, and, you know, the environment on a global scale. I'm aware that we're moving on with time, but I really just want to touch on the fact that at this point, while I know that you're going on leave very soon to go and study a yoga course, which I just think is, you know...
the yoga course is cancelled because we can't gather.
Oh, you can't do it remotely? No.
So I've got my annual leave, but I can't do the thing I was going to do with it. But I'll do some online study instead. There's
a market there. Someone who's watching, do an online yoga course. Tell Sekita. But just wanting to quickly touch on the fact that over this really challenging time for a lot of us, you've been an essential worker as a midwife. Which in my mind is just like, wow, you're amazing. I mean, I think you're amazing anyway, but, you know, to actually go out there and to still be able to put people's minds at ease, you know, and helping women to give birth to their babies at a time where going to hospital is kind of maybe a scary thing. Can we talk quickly, just, you know, in a quick summary, just about how that's been going, maybe for yourself and maybe for the people who are coming in to see you?
Yeah, well, I work at both Nelson Hospital on the maternity ward, and that's our biggest hospital at the top of the South Island. Like Christchurch is bigger, but north of Christchurch, we're the biggest hospital on the South Island. And then I also work at a primary birthing unit in Motueka, where a woman who are well through pregnancy and there's no anticipated complications can have their baby, but also can come for postnatal care. Sorry, that was not so clear. For postnatal care, anyone can come there. So women who have cesarean, say at Nelson Hospital, once they've had their first day or so of recovering from their cesarean at Nelson Hospital, they sometimes transfer out to Motueka for a more homely, quieter period of postnatal care. What we've noticed at this time is that the primary unit has been getting busier because, and I think wisely so, personally, and this is my view, not the DHB's or the people I work for, though many of my colleagues have similar views, I think, that wisely so, people who don't need to go to the hospital are not going to the hospital. And so we've seen more births, you know, women who initially were planning on a hospital birth, more of them choosing to birth at the primary centre. My understanding across New Zealand, the primary birthing centres are being kept as what we're calling green zones in the health system, in the DHB system. So green zones where people can go who need care, but they have no risk factors around COVID-19. And so, so women who are well and don't have any of the risk factors on the screening questions can go there for birth or postnatal care. And we've noticed a lot more women using that facility. And from a midwifery perspective, birth, like being pregnant, having a baby, is a normal life event. It's something that bodies can do. Like bodies can climb mountains. It can be really hard, challenging. Lots of people sort of say, I think it's a bit cheesy, but labor's called labor for a reason. It is labor. It's hard work. But on the whole, our bodies are designed for it. I personally also think you need to take into account that we don't use our bodies these days always in the way they're designed. Many of us spend long hours sitting in cars, sitting in office chairs, pushing on remote buttons rather than getting up and doing things ourselves. So I think that does change a bit how capable our bodies are sometimes of doing strenuous physical things. But nevertheless, a woman's body was designed to be pregnant and to give birth. So we don't view pregnancy or childbirth as a sickness. And so from a midwifery-based knowledge point of view, it's a bit like, we've ended up in this place where pregnancy and childbirth have become medicalized, and for quite some time viewed as almost like you're not healthy, you're not well. Come into the medical system, where more often than not, like more than 50% of women, they're not unwell in pregnancy or childbirth, and their bodies can do that. And that's where I think I feel really grateful for all of my experience as an outdoor instructor coming into midwifery. And lots of people, when they ask me what I've done prior, like, wow, that's really different professions, an outdoor instructor teaching people to kayak or rock climb or navigate in the bush versus midwifery. And for me, I'm like, sort of like you're in different settings, quite different settings, but the actual what you're doing is really similar, because both of them, in the big picture, in the large scheme, you are supporting people and helping equip them with skills to do something that often they feel out of their comfort zone, but that they can do, and that usually is, if they do it well, it's safe and it's normal. We can climb mountains, we can give birth. It's hard work, but most of the time we can do it. And in both professions, the facilitator, being the outdoor instructor or the midwife, the role is to know very well what normal looks like. So if things start looking not normal, you know when to call the helicopter or the ambulance, or to call stop and make a new plan. And that's where, I think for both, people tramping at Outward Bound, they hopefully are pushed outside of their comfort zone, and they have to work hard, and they realize they're capable of more than they thought, and that expands their comfort zones and lets them bring more stuff into their life, and in turn creates, fulfillment and wellness and happiness. But they can do that in a zone that is the comfort zone and not the danger zone, because they know that they've got a well-trained instructor, that if the instructor hears, there's an avalanche coming, they're going to know what to do to get the group out of the way. And the individuals don't need to worry about those things. They just need to worry about how do I fuel myself and my team and keep, look out for each other so we can get to the top of the mountain, or what is my body telling me I need to do right now so I can give birth to this baby, and worry about the things that are within your control. Like, do I need to rest now between these contractions? Do I need to drink some water? Do I need to eat some food? Does having that person in the room not feel right and they need to be told to leave? Those are the things within our control. And the things that are out of our control, like for a woman having labor, like knowing exactly when the time is to call an obstetrician, or if a baby's being stressed, so we might want to have the pediatricians on standby. Hopefully their brain's not needing to think about all those things, because if it is, then what the brain needs to be doing and the hormones the brain needs to be releasing, it won't be able to do them both, and that in itself will hinder. And that's where, you know, that's the job of the person facilitating. And I think that's also really relevant sort of stuff, like takeaways for this time of COVID, that trying to take a deep breath and look at, and people can look up these models online. Our circle of influence and control versus what's not in our control, and really the futility of worrying about what's not in our control. Like, there's no point being really upset that it's going to rain tomorrow, because you can't do anything about it. But what you can do is go and patch your raincoat, so when you have to walk down to the shop to get that bottle of milk, you're going to be warm and dry, you know. And I think, yeah, that's in childbirth, climbing a mountain, being thrown in the sea and having to swim to shore. You know, you can't control if there's sharks there, but you can control if you swim faster or not. You know, focus on those things.
Just got to swim faster than the person behind you, right?
Yeah, I don't know. Depends if the shark likes eating the person at the front or the back. But, yeah, like there's, focusing on what we control, and also, looking at our comfort zones and trying to stretch them, but being healthily aware of, you know, what's your comfort zone and what's your danger zone, and stretch your comfort zone and look after yourself, be gentle with yourself, and take stock of, you know, what do I actually need and what are the wants, you know. Like, I really want chocolate tomorrow, but I'm going to survive fine if Gilby didn't buy any before lockdown and hide it for me. He did.
Just portion it out. Just give me one block at a time, okay? Not everything. Sekita-Ra, I really love your takeaway message there. I think so many people who are watching can go, wow, she's been in all these really uncomfortable situations, you know, for other people, and she's guided us, and she's speaking to us from a place of, you've got this within you. And if you feel like you don't have this within you to get through COVID, then ask for help. You know, treat yourself with kindness and compassion, and ask for help. And also, if we were to connect with whatever it is that is greater than ourselves, in a way, we can also get a sense of we're being looked after during this time. You know, when we're not in this washing machine by ourselves, there's something greater at play here. We're feeling a little bit like we're isolated, and a little bit like we're in the bush by ourselves, and we don't know what the outcome is, but we just need to trust that somebody does, you know, whatever that thing is.
And there are so many people reaching out and helping each other in ways that don't often happen, and that warms my heart. And it also makes me feel slightly sad that why can't we be that kind and generous all the time? So it makes us good. So I just do want to put a little plug in for being a midwife now. If there are any women out there that are expecting their babies now, some of the mothers in this area have set up a Facebook page called April Babies, and it's for the whole nation. April Babies. The administrator invited a few midwives as well, so that there are some people that will monitor that if anyone's sharing information, clinical information, that it is correct information. But a lot of, there's a lot of nice stuff happening there of mums talking to each other, sharing what they needed or didn't need, how some home births have gone where, you know, women who didn't think they would be having a home birth wasn't sort of something they'd imagined, but now in this time I've gone, actually, because at hospital I can only have a husband or a partner there for labour and birth, and then they have to go home because no visitors at the hospital. There are women, you know, thinking, is it healthy and safe for me to have a birth at a primary unit or at a home birth? So there's women sharing stuff around that. And just so many people reaching out and, you know, shouting over the fence to their neighbour that, hey, I'm going to the supermarket, so to keep us all safer, should we just do one trip between all of us and I'll leave a box at your doorstep? So I think that's really awesome.
Well, thank you so much for that plug. I'll definitely make sure I write that up, because I think that's really awesome. And what a great initiative as well, because there'll be a lot of expectant mothers out there who maybe are feeling a little bit fearful around. Not only are they going through the process of maybe having their first child or their second one or third, whatever the case is, and what's going to happen, but about having that support network and wonderful midwives like you out there, Sekita-Ra. Honestly, I applaud the work that you do. I always have. I'm a big advocate for everything that you've done in your life. Just so proud to call you a really, really good friend. And I just want to say thank you so much for coming on board. I've really appreciated talking to you.
My pleasure. And I did just think of one more detail. On that page, there's really practical things like the links to where you can buy a breast pump or a car seat, how to support with breastfeeding if you're getting the latch with your baby not quite right, things like that. And I guess last plug, I think women that give birth and raise children are amazing.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a very important job.
Yeah. Well done. And to their partners who support them through that.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Thank you so much, Sekita-Ra. Bye for now.
Lovely seeing you. Take care.
See you. Bye. Bye.